A formal thank you to Mr. Vinayak Godse, as always, leading the way. All the exciting possibilities of AI, both from an engineering and from an ethical and philosophical standpoint. My personal favorite was, I think, the attention token. So I think that's something I would love to talk to you about. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is how we start BPM 2024. So a round of applause for that. And thank you so much. I hope you have had your breakfast. For people who have just joined us or joined us the last 15 minutes, we have enough and more exciting and even more interesting discussions coming your way. So kindly keep your agendas with you at all times. With that, up next we have a very, very interactive workshop, just like Vinayak sir said, also on AI. This time we have the kind folks from Palo Alto, and we'll be discussing about securing AI with AI. We welcome, please join me in welcoming the Palo Alto team to the stage. Mr. Suvin Mullaseril, Head, Systems Engineering, India South. Calvin Lobo, Systems Engineer. Mallikarjuna, PS, Security Architect. And Mr. Rakesh Singh, Cloud Security Architect to the stage. Team, the stage is all yours. Warm welcome, please, Suvin brother.
Thank you. Am I audible? I think you can hear me now. Thank you. Thank you, Vinayak sir. Thank you, DSCI. My name is Suvin. I lead the Systems Engineering Pre-Sales team for Palo Alto Networks, and it's a pleasure and honor to be here. From the Palo Alto Networks perspective, right, I think it is our association goes back years, and the first time that I did a session with Mr. Vinayak was in 2018. And for the last, I think, 6 years now, we've been partnering with DSCI in the best practice meet in order to make sure that we sort of disseminate information with respect to what we are doing, and also give you sort of insight into how we can help improve the security efficacy that your organizations have. And today's conversation is extremely important, right? Today's conversation, I'll take off from where Mr. Vinayak said, AI has become pervasive. AI is there everywhere. And how many of you used AI today at least once? At least once? Pretty much everyone put your hands up, right? And how many of you use AI within your organizations today? Most of you will still put your hands up. So the chances are, and this is like, if you were to look at AI today, right, the problem statement is we've been pushed into the dark end of a pool. And most of us did not know swimming. When Mr. Vinayak was asking us what tokenization meant, what attention tokens mean, 4 people put their hands up. So we've been pushed into the dark end or the deep end of the pool, and we don't know swimming. And that's the problem statement that we are trying to solve. And the next maybe hour or so, my team and I will take you through the kind of thought process that you should have as organizations in order to improve your posture, especially with AI. And there are 2 facets to AI, right? And while we bring up the slide, there are 2 facets to AI. One is accessing AI, right? Which means that the explosion of AI applications across the world has meant that everyone is using AI. And how can we use AI to defend and protect ourselves against this AI? So with that, I'll get started. I hope the slides are up. Can we have the slide up, please?
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. All right. Once again, it sort of goes back to what we were seeing earlier, right? And a lot of what you're seeing on screen now is something that Mr. Vinayak covered very eloquently during his breakfast conversation. He spoke about self-learning. He spoke about social reasoning. He spoke about emotional intelligence. And what we see at Palo Alto Networks is, from 2024, where we have 250 million active users of AI, within 2034, the next decade or so, we will have approximately 5 billion users of AI. My mother uses AI today. And you know for what? WhatsApp actually has this option to search for or generate images for wishes to be sent out. Every day she goes there and then she types out saying, give me an image for sending good morning to somebody. Not something that we would have expected parents to look at, right? So with everyone using AI, the number of users increase. And it's already the fastest growing technology in our history. If you were to compare it with the internet, if you were to compare it with a mobile, how many of you have ever used a pager in your lives? 30, 40%, right? It came and it went. But the time that it took for the mobile to become pervasive, and you compare it with what's happening in AI, from 2022 onwards until now, it's sort of taken the world by storm. The problem statement that it brings together is that it's fueling an exponential growth in AI applications. And in 2030, we expect more than 12,000 different applications, and every SaaS application that you use will be ingested or infested with AI. Because every organization is looking at using AI for improving marketing. Every organization is looking at doing better business analytics, which means that the kind of applications that will run AI will also increase substantially over the next few years. And we don't need to speak about this, right? Every large organization is tasked with embedding AI into their own tools. Every organization, we have our own AI tool that are actually trained on the models that we have and the data that we have to deliver better security outcomes for customers. So next time you raise a case with Palo Alto Networks, there's an AI engine that runs behind, goes through the entirety of our database, and then figures out what could be the right response to a specific issue that a customer is facing. And every organization, all of you, will have different people that are working on different tools like these. The problem statement is slightly different, right? How many of you, and this is with respect to our conversations, and my team will take you through the kind of work that we are doing and the way that you need to look at it. The problem statement is slightly tricky here. How many of you use ChatGPT in a personal capacity today? Most of you do, right? The moment you start putting your organization's confidential information into ChatGPT, it becomes part of a training model that can be exposed later, which makes it extremely complex for us to manage that. You can prompt ChatGPT to give you a wrong response or something that should not be exposed. So data exposure can happen. And because of all of these, right, and the fact that AI requires high performance GPUs, and like we were speaking earlier, maybe with the quantum compute age, the chance is that you will not build your own AI models within your enterprise. You will use cloud services to run them. You will rely on third-party providers to run them. And the data that you expose to these models actually makes it even more difficult for you to control that. And all this AI usage needs to be secured. We are at the DSCI Best Practice Meet for 2024. The thought process that you would need to take with you today is that any usage of AI, any user that is using AI within your organizations, and every AI application that you use within your organizations need to be secured. So over the next few minutes that my team will take you through, we'll sort of help you understand how you can track and monitor AI usage. And this is not Palo Alto Networks. This is not us speaking from the perspective of an OEM telling you to use Palo Alto Networks, but to sort of take this thought process back within your organizations to see how many of your users are actually using AI applications today. How many of your users are actually exposing data to these AI applications that they're using? How many of your internal teams are developing models and exposing data to these models that could create problems for you in the future? And most importantly, how do you protect this data from unauthorized usage and leakage at all times? So the way that we've crafted this workshop is slightly different from what we have usually. So we've got 3 different tracks which will run for around 10-12 minutes each. We'll talk about the first part, which is basically securing access to AI applications that can be both internal and external. Then we'll talk about the kind of exposure and the data models and how you need to secure the models that are running on cloud. And third and most importantly, how you can use AI to improve your efficiency and efficacy of the SOC, right? 3 distinct and really good things to look about. And each of these will run for 10-12 minutes. I request you to keep your attention right with us because we will have some questions at the end. And for those of you who come up with the right answers, we've got some goodies to give away. So without further ado, let me invite Calvin Lobo onto stage. He's going to talk to you about AI access and how to secure access to AI applications. Calvin.
Hello. Yeah. So I think something changed back last year, October 2023, right? ChatGPT went mainstream, right? Everyone was using ChatGPT, right? And at that point, I still remember I came across ChatGPT, I showed Suvin, and we had a conversation for about 3 hours on what if can be done, what sort of innovation, what sort of use cases can be achieved with this solution itself, right? And then we spent about 8 hours talking about the security implication of all of these Gen AI apps that are coming, right? So it's a fact to say that these AI technology is the fastest adoption that humankind has ever seen till date, right? We are all using these different Gen AI applications in the enterprise and for personal use as well, right? It is driving different sort of innovation. It is driving productivity, but also it is introducing a lot of significant risk when it comes to security, right? That's exactly what I'm going to be talking about today, looking at how we can enable safe Gen AI access in your enterprise, right? So if you're looking at today, 57% of your employees are using Gen AI apps, right? Believe it or not, you are controlling it or not, this is actually happening, right? These are users who are using on corporate laptops different sort of Gen AI apps for different sort of purposes, right? There are hundreds and hundreds of applications being used across for productivity, being used across by developers, being used across by sales and marketing, right? For an example, across productivity applications, we are seeing users using it to drive better workflow analysis, better data analysis, right? And when it comes to developers, we are seeing all of these developers and testers using it to build better code, debug better, and also build better software, right? And when it comes to sales and marketing, we are seeing these folks use it to build better marketing carousels, drive better email campaigns, and also write a lot of emails, right? 3 out of every email that I receive today, I feel are written by ChatGPT. No joke, right? I do feel because it starts off respectfully yours, right? I'm writing to get your thoughts on this, right? So most of these emails are definitely being written and we are all using it, right? Because it is helping us do better. So definitely these Gen AI applications are here to stay, right? But what are the risks? Let's look at a couple of examples, right? To start with, we have a user who is using a software to transcribe and summarize his meetings, right? Let's assume this meeting discusses some form of confidential and sensitive information which can cause harm to the your stock price before an earnings call, right? And since IT doesn't have visibility into this Gen AI app itself, it has no way to apply any sort of risk mitigation to prevent this data leakage, right? And there are hundreds of such applications which are doing this, right? This is just a few examples. This is actually happening, no joke, right? Similarly, let's take another example. We spoke about developers, right? I was on visit to Chennai last week. I went to 3 orgs, right? And out of these 3 orgs, I was waiting near the reception. I saw 2 developers straight up take code, upload that code on ChatGPT and BART, and ask to optimize this code itself. This is happening as well, right? This is where we are seeing most of these developers and testers, right, inadvertently uploading some sort of access token, right? They are API keys onto these apps, right? And since all of these apps use all the data that you provide to train itself, your data is now public, right? This is where you're inadvertently also seeing data leakage challenges. The third challenge that we are now seeing is when it comes to sales and marketing, right? We are seeing that there are hundreds of Gen AI applications which are built now, right? And let's take this example where I'm a sales guy. I'm trying to write some sort of a blog for my marketing campaign along with other folks, right? And unfortunately, this Gen AI app that is built is now jailbroken. And it is giving me, for prompts that I give, I'm getting an email back with some sort of a link, right? Unfortunately, since this Gen AI app is jailbroken, I'm receiving a malicious link, right? Which means that there is potential for these different Gen AI apps to be used as a proliferation point for some sort of C2 campaigns and malicious activity, right? And there are, again, hundreds of other apps which are doing this, right? We are not just seeing SaaS apps, we are also seeing a lot of users using plugins itself to help in their day-to-day activity, right? That is it. Hello? Am I audible? Okay. So that is where what we are seeing is there are these Gen apps, right? And they are here to stay. We can't go out there and directly block them because they are helping us be more productive, right? And this is an open statement that I make. In another few years, most of the SaaS apps that are going to be used are either going to be Gen AI apps or they are going to be SaaS apps which are going to be inculcating some sort of Gen AI in them, right? Because we had the examples of Grammarly, Notion. These were traditional SaaS apps itself, right, which were helping you do better work on a day-to-day basis. And now they're inculcating some sort of a co-pilot, right, to help your work simplify. That is where we can't go out there and straight up block these SaaS applications. We need a better approach on how do I get visibility, how do I put in the right controls over these SaaS applications to ensure that these are appropriate in terms of the enterprise, right? So without much delay, let's hop in and look at how we can do this, right? What's the workflow that ideally an organization should follow or look to follow to ensure that we can enable safe access to AI, right? So the first thing as cybersecurity practitioners that we always see is it drives down always to visibility, right? If you want to do security, your ground point foundation has to be visibility. That is where we need to have complete visibility into what these Gen AI apps are in real time. As users access, I need to be able to classify all of these Gen AI apps, right? This is where we are able to give that visibility in terms of the 30 Gen AI apps being used and what are the different sort of users who are interacting with this Gen AI apps itself, as well as identify these different Gen AI apps across different sort of use cases. So if you can see here, one of the most popular use case that you can see on the screen is regards to writing assistant, right? And there are about 24 Gen AI applications which are being used on a day-to-day basis for writing assistance use case, right? Of which 6 are sanctioned application and a major chunk of them are unsanctioned, which means they are not approved by the organization itself, right? So, but what should be the workflow for me once I have this visibility to determine that specific application is sanctioned and then put guardrails around that sanctioned application and block unsanctioned applications? So if you can see here, for this writing assistant, we are able to get that visibility on what exactly is the use case that this helps, right? Writing assistance helps you provide some sort of writing suggestion, grammar suggestions, help you prepare content itself, as well as the risk associated with these Gen AI app itself for this specific use case. And along with that, a detailed inventory, right? Since we are able to inspect these users in real time, a detailed inventory of what are all the different Gen AI apps. We see the app likes of Hugging Face, Cloudbase, Perplexity AI, right? Which are currently being unsanctioned, which means they're currently being blocked, right? But I need to understand how do I understand and sanction them. So that's why let's take an example of Google Gemini, wherein we currently see this as sanctioned, and we are seeing that 2 users are currently using it, and there's been about 24.5 MB of data transfer associated with this Gen AI app itself, right? Let's for now assume this was unsanctioned, this was seen for the first time, right? What sort of data inputs would I need to go ahead and classify it, right? So when you go here, you have a visibility into what sort of data transfer has been seen, right? Which indicates that this is a Gen AI app which has been actively being used and how many users are using it. Similarly, a sort of a description around the Gen AI app itself, because there is a proliferation of it. I can't go around having understanding of all the Gen AI apps that are there, right? Understanding that this is a multimodal Gen AI apps. And in terms of Gen AI attributes itself, what are the input vectors that it takes? Since it's an LLM model, specifically with regards to Gemini, it would be taking your input vectors like an audio file, image, a text prompt, right? And the outputs can be an image file, a text file, and a query itself. And what are the use cases? The use cases help me understand the scope of the Gen AI app itself. It can be used for coding. It can be used for some sort of conversational assistance, right? And much more. As well as understanding if this specific app has an enterprise version as well, if I choose to go with it, right? And the key fact to understand also helps you understand if the data that I provide to this application, is it actively being used in training the model itself? Which means that if I'm putting data out there, will it be taken for input? As well as understanding what sort of security and privacy concerns does this have, right? So if you're looking at the screen, we can understand that Gemini sort of has data retention of your data, whatever you provide, for about 1 to 12 months, right? There's also sharing of this data with third-party providers, right? These are all attributes that you will actively consider in terms of your internal policies as well, and take these into consideration and also understand what sort of identity controls can be put around these applications, right? Is there any way for me to restrict only corporate access to this, not personal access? As well as, does this follow the compliance and regulation standard for my organization? And based on these different metrics, you can come to an educated guess as per as your internal policies to allow that application or block that application. That's where you're going to go ahead and put it into different buckets from a sanctioned application, unsanctioned, or tolerated application standpoint, right? And once you're done putting into those different buckets, right, the goal is to have an automated policy which essentially learns the tag, right? And on top of that tag, it appropriates the appropriate policy to say that, okay, this was a unsanctioned app, essentially block access, right? And if it's a sanctioned app, I want to put additional controls over it, right? What sort of controls, right? This is where your data controls come into play, right? Your threat controls comes into play. So if you can see on the screen here, you can see about 3 policies. These should ideally be your inbuilt policies, wherein you're putting them into different buckets and segregating them as per desired access, wherein sanctioned acts can be for all users, unsanctioned should be completely blocked, and tolerated can be for strictly specific users or specific devices itself, right? And even when you look at a sanctioned policy, there is this need to put the appropriate guardrails, right? This is where you're putting guardrails around what sort of file I want to upload, download from this SaaS app, right? What sort of DLP controls I want to put around it, right? To ensure that, let's say I want to use ChatGPT in my org, I want to also ensure that nobody is out there putting source code onto this Gen AI applications. Nobody's uploading PII data, right? And also in case of where these Gen AI apps can get compromised, I also want to put in the necessary guardrails to say that I'm putting threat controls around it, right? Threat controls around, let's say, vulnerability protection, around sandboxing, right? Around malware analysis. All of these should go hand in hand to work together, right? To ensure that there's proper guardrails around the application itself and allowing safe access around it, right? You can get more granular around the application where you can say, I want to allow upload, right? But I don't want to allow users to download some content around it, right? And that is where all of these controls will work hand in hand. And even when it comes to DLP, right, the need of the hour is to have broad coverage, right? Broad coverage around different sort of data patterns, right? Different sort of data dictionaries, right? The coverage to, since we are talking about multimodal models, right? Multimodal models can accept inputs as text, as images, right? I should be able to scan for these confidential information across all these different sort of multimodal inputs, as well as leverage these machine learning classifiers to ensure any sort of confidential data that can possibly get uploaded, I'm accurately understanding it and blocking it, right? This is how we believe you have to look at access to Gen AI itself, right? Starting with visibility, and then after necessary vetting, putting in the necessary controls around DLP, around threat prevention to allow the only access that is needed, right? So let's look at a user who is connected, right? Who would ideally be connected to the platform itself and how it might look for the user here, right? So as you know, we had Hugging Face, which was an unsanctioned application. So when I look at accessing Hugging Face itself, the specific SaaS application is blocked, right? Whereas if you looked at ChatGPT and Gemini, we vetted it. And as an enterprise, we looked at allowing it and put in necessary guardrails around it, right? So if you can see here, we have classified ChatGPT as a sanctioned app, right? And I've put around DLP controls like we spoke, right? So if you can look at here, I'm able to access ChatGPT. I'm able to converse normally with it, right? But if I was to put around any sort of confidential data here, let's take an example where I look to upload some sort of sample PAN card data, right? When I look to upload this data, right, the solution should work inline, right? It can't be working passively, right? It can't be that I upload it and then I alert it on it, right? Ideal goal should be whenever the user looks at uploading this data, right, it should essentially fail to upload it, right? That is where you have to have a solution which works inline and is able to process and block it in real time, right? That's what ideal goal should be. We've also spoken to organizations wherein they're saying that there is a need for defense in depth, right? I'm also seeing users who are able to bypass things. I want to put in guardrails at multiple different places. That is where they're talking about, I have this challenge wherein my users copy source code, right? They're pasting it, you're blocking it. But is there any way that I can block it on the browser itself? I don't want to have the ability to allow the user to copy any form of data and upload on this Gen AI app, right? That is where you can look at a browser, right, which again has necessary controls around different sort of controls. If you can see here, this would be a hardened browser, right? And this browser has controls around file controls, right? It has controls around screenshotting controls, right? It has capability to do a lot of watermarking itself, right? So you can see here on the screen, you have restrictions around what user can type on the console itself, what I can interact with this GenAI app. If I was to type some PAN card information, it has ability to block, right? You can see capture as there where you can create ability to do data masking, ability to do blocking of screenshots itself, and the ability to block any sort of copy activity, right? So that is where, let's say I have any sort of source code, right? I'm trying to copy it. Or another example, let's take is that there is this credit card information, right? When I try to copy and paste this credit card information right here, it directly gives me a pop-up saying that pasting itself is blocked. This is where what we feel the need of the hour, right? At the end of the day, with these applications, you need to look at defense in depth, right? You need to have guardrails at multiple different points, right? Which gives you visibility, which gives you ability to understand these GenAI applications because they are new, right? And ability to give broader coverage, right? This coverage has to constantly increase on a daily basis, right? And based on that coverage, you have ability to create controls, and these controls are automatically applied along with the appropriate DLP profile as well as the threat control of your choice, which enables the safe access to AI itself. So that's been my time. Thank you. We can take any questions after this. We'll take it towards the end.
Everyone is interested and everyone understands the user interaction part of it, where you are using a SaaS application, which is ChatGPT or something else. But that is a smaller worry for you if you look at it from your data perspective, correct? Because the data worry is on your server side. By the way, how many of your organization is developing something on ChatGPT or any other AI model? Your own apps, correct? Chat apps and others. By the way, for others who didn't raise their hand, how sure are you that your developers are not doing that? Correct? That's the important part. By the time your application is ready and you try to come in, the only thing you can do is put something in front so that you can block something, correct? But your ChatGPT already, or whatever model that you have decided, has already learned all the hidden data that you never wanted to be. And now if you look inside the model, you can't see anything. It's all scrambled. So it's too late. So your job on the server side, you don't need to wait for things to be, I'm ready to deploy now, the VAPT, another team can come in. No. Your job is now when the developers are working on it. You need to know where your data is connected and stuff like that. Okay? So that's what we are going to talk about, your server side. I don't need to talk about it. I think in 2 seconds, you all agreed. There is always some application your developers are working on to take care of the GenAI. The one thing that we need to talk about from the security perspective is what are the things that we need to worry about, correct? Because at least in the user access side, you know there is a firewall, SASE, some solution in place which will try to intercept everything and tell you what's happening. But on the server side, how will you keep track of this? And by the way, this changes every 15 days. We all know, correct? Models keep coming. The AWS keeps launching services, and GCP, Oracle, Azure, they're all launching services. But primarily, if you look at all your application stack, how does it look like? There are 3 parts to it. We are all worry about the runtime. As I said, that's too late. That anyway, when it comes, you will have to put some inline security to take care of the prompt injection attacks and DLP and all those things. You need to worry about this, which is where the infra runs, how the application stack runs, and what goes into it. Remember, in the cloud, your developers are not writing from scratch, correct? That world is over. 20 years back, we used to say 80% of your code is yours. Baki sab is basically 20% is from some framework or stuff. But today it is like other way around. Probably 90% you have ready-made components that are coming in. So that's where all the usual suspect. I will not go into details of this. You have seen OS top 10 for LLM. If you have not seen, just go for it. But the idea is, there is a supply chain. There are the libraries that you're using to write your application. PyTorch, the most popular libraries developed by Facebook. But are you sure that the right version of the library is used by your developers? You don't know. So there could be a supply chain component that come into picture. There are basically, whenever you are writing any application, the provider of that AI stack will give you options to put all the filtering, hate and stuff like that. Are they using all those things? Basically, the data source that you're using, that itself has a problem or not. Whether the data source on which this is working, that has a PII data or not. DPDP is coming. And even if it is not coming, the worry is much bigger nowadays, correct? So this, and when it comes to the stack, once it is deployed, okay, now most of the time you are not even aware of this, but as soon as it comes over here, this part of the data is probably much more dangerous, that what production data it is touching. So if it is a what you call customer support chat GPT or whatever interface that you have created, what is the data that people are able to extract out of it, correct? People put some prompt and it shows someone's credit card data. Are you okay with that and stuff like that? So I will not go into details, as you said. We will just bypass this and look at how do you think about approaching this problem? Because if you look from outside, just putting a firewall or SASE or proxy is the easiest solution. But as I said, that's already too late. So the main concern that we need to address in your AI applications is, first of all, what models are being running? Have people signed off on the models? There are hundreds of models and iterations happening. Open source models are quite a lot. AWS itself allows you to choose. In AWS Bedrock, you can choose out of, I think, 3 dozen models that are already available, correct? Are you over-reliant on the model? Is unsanctioned, sanctioned, and stuff like that. Second, as we see, is data misuse. That is, the data that this particular model is touching. Is it sanctioned, unsanctioned, and stuff like that? Obviously, this part is well understood, correct? The prompt injection piece and stuff like that. So if you want to start this, how will you do it? Very simple. If you go to your developers and say, I want to do cloud security, what does he do? Okay, I will give you a login to AWS, Azure, GCP, do security, correct? So that's the problem. All the tools that the cloud provider does or gives is for the developers and the SRE teams to use, not for security team. And if you have tried to do anything, you exactly know there might be some feature somewhere hidden. Yes, you can have an inventory. Try pulling down all the inventory of this. How much time will it take? So let's start with that problem. Let me try my luck. I'm trying to log in live. Let's see. Hopefully things are on my side. Let's see. Okay, good start. Okay. Let's give it a few seconds. IT, we all hate IT, correct? Especially when you're giving demo, you need to wait for things. But we know that's the only thing protecting your organization. So let's be patient a bit seconds. The idea here is there an automated way by doing whatever integration stuff that you can discover every AI related projects that are running in your environment? What are the toolings they are using? What are the models they are using? What are the data they are using? All those things. Remember, where is data? That's the other question. They are looking very good. Just looking good. Let's come back to home. Let me not talk about the product. The idea here is, can you have automated discovery, which can say, in my case, there are basically 6 models running, 2 plugins, and there are actual models or inference models you are running. Are you able to do a deep dive on this? Basically, what are the training data sets associated and stuff like that? Let me just go into detail of this a bit so that we can, let me increase. Is the font good, by the way? Okay. Yeah. So something like this. Are you able to create this automated bill of material of what applications are running? In this case, if you see on the Azure, AWS and GCP, there are various projects that are running. What are the models they are using? It's a chat GPT, or in this case, Titan. I didn't even know Titan till I saw in the morning that somebody is running Titan in my test environment. And basically, what are the plugins? In this case, these are the plugins running and stuff like that. So this is the first starting point, correct? You basically build up your bill of material of all the attack surface, correct? That's the first job of security. Second thing is, now this model, if you want to inference more, you need to know what data is being learned over here. So in this case, the first line, it's saying that the data that is a model is touching has got some developer secrets and PII. So that also needs to happen, and that's not an easy problem to solve. The reason is, remember, where does data lie in the cloud? Any raise of hands? If I say in your AWS, Azure, GCP, where is the data lying? S3 bucket, blob store? Yes. Correct. Databases? Yes. Anywhere else? So think it like that. You have a live database with your critical data. If the developer is going to run his test project, what does he do? He copies that database, runs it on his own VM as a private database. Is it visible to you? No, not visible. Okay. So that's the first danger. So it's a hidden data. Correct. The second is somebody took a backup of the database and they were doing testing, and later they probably the database is deleted, but the snapshot of the database is lying somewhere in your environment. Correct. That's a hidden data. Is there a way to find that out? No. So you need a ways to basically discover all the hidden data, because those are the data that developers are working on. They are not working on the crown jewel that you have identified. Those are obviously there, but there are lots of hidden data where the development projects are happening. Correct? You need to find that out. And for if you look at that data, basically you should be able to identify the data. I will just take up this instance of an S3 bucket, figure out what are the risks associated with data, but specific to our requirements of Gen AI, basically where are any PII data happening or not. So basically once you identify and once we have a sign off, let's go back to understanding the AI assets and the risks. Let's take up one of these applications. Now we have collected all this data, the bill of material of the AI projects, the data that is associated with it. Let's do a bit of a click through on this and see what additional context now we need to. Now we have the enough background information, and we can basically see the graphs coming up that this is the Azure OpenAI account. It is using the ChatGPT model. The app front end that is being developed is called Singh or in this case. And you can see the broad problems that are there, that this is open to the world. Obviously, we have said there are developer secrets in PII, but let's look into that a bit more. So this is the associated data that is there, and it has classified that looks like there are a bit of a developer secrets. But these are all what we call risk. Ultimately, we are trying to identify the combination of risk, because these are all individual data points, and your security outcome or governance practice will not depend on generating the reports, but automatically identifying the risk and highlighting it. In this case, can you see a couple of alerts? Let me just zoom into a bit so that make it easy for you guys. So this is AI assets without content filtering. Remember, this is normally the configuration option or the plugin that you are using, your developers are using, will have this kind of configuration, but you are not even aware, or the developer is not even aware and using it, correct? There are these types of content filters that can be applied. You don't need to buy third-party components from Palo Alto or anyone else to do the inline security. There are few basic things that are there from the context window perspective, what can be allowed, and basically how do you want to, those are the simple flags that is service provider is providing, but are your team using it? Obviously, this is the bigger challenge, that you are building this application for external world or internal use. If it is internal use, you can have a developer secrets and PII, probably it's okay. But if it is external world, you need to take care of all those components. And the last thing is obviously using the sensitive data. All these components, basically, if you put it across, that's the only way to start doing security. Once you identify that assets are open to the world and you need to now put a runtime security, that's an easy way to do that. Once you have the bill of material in place. Correct. So just to summarize, I think I will just skip this. We just went through this. This is the runtime security model. You should be able to identify where the user lies, what are the plugins, and you should be able to insert security in between, just like you do for web services, front-end, middleware, all the security services that you do, micro segmentation and stuff. That's absolutely fine. Just to summarize, there are three things that typically you need to do. Automate AI discovery and classification. It cannot be an Excel sheet-based exercise where the project team comes with their requirement that this is what we are going to do. Please sanction it. No Excel sheets, because Excel sheets are we all know by the time they are written, they're already expired. They might have taken approval for, let's say, OpenAI 3.5 ChatGPT as an approval. By the time they go back, they figure out 3.4, 3.7 is available. They will not even tell you, continue to use it, correct? So you need to have an automatic discovery of all these backend components that are coming into your AI application. And you need to have an automated way of identifying the risk, which includes network exposure, which includes permissions, that this AI model is having permissions to access what all data, what is lying in that data. Basically, typically, the nomenclature that is coming in the market is AI security posture management. That's broadly the terminology. Let's see how it goes. Gartner, we usually wait for Gartner to coin a terminology, but looks like AI security posture management tries to solve this problem on your developer side, on your cloud side. And obviously, once this is done, you need to take care of inline security. That continues to be just like any web applications. You need to do runtime security so that you take care of data exfiltration, or basically somebody trying to do prompt injection and stuff like that. That's all I had planned. Thank you so much. I hope it was useful. We have Mallikarjuna coming in to talk about basically how can you power your SOC using Gen AI technologies.
Thanks, Rakesh. Thanks for the quick overview on ASPM. Good morning, everyone. Before I start, I basically want to understand how many of you are from security operations here? Yeah, great. Thank you. So we are all talking about securing AI in every organization and how it's been leveraged and so on and so forth, right? So let's try to understand how is it contributing from about the phases, right? We all know that AI is contributing for business acceleration. It could be from productivity, intelligence, and from a multi-fact. At the same time, what are the challenges it is creating in the environment, especially from a security aspect, right? So if you look at the trend, so in 2021-22, the mean time to compromise and exfiltrate in any organization was somewhere around 44 days, right? But today, as we speak, it has come down to 13 hours, and the anticipation in next 1 or 2 years is going to be somewhere lesser than 3 hours, right? If an attacker is able to compromise an environment at a greater speed, so how are we going to address it with our security operations center? Can we continue to operate the way we are operating in security operations center, or do we need to change the approach, or do we need to change the model, the way we are performing our day-to-day operation? That's where the risk is, right? If you look at all these examples, today the ransomware it can be developed within 3 hours, and the attack can impact an organization within 3 hours time. Similar way, for compromise and exfiltration, it is less than a day, and to exploit an vulnerability where we are talking about 2 months to 3 months, right? That has been come down to 1 week time. So we need to gear up, we need to act in light speed, and we need to start responding to threats or incidents in real time. That's the need of an hour in any security operations center. So in order to scale to that, we need to respond in real time, and we need to automate the security operations center with embedding that AI strongly into our environment and having that capability in the platform, saying that I should not have a scheduled manner of getting an insights, rather as and when there is an anomaly or any kind of exfiltration happens, I should be able to detect that in real time. Not only detecting, I should be able to respond to it in an automated fashion in real time, so that I am mitigating the risk in my environment, right? How do we adopt that? That's the key concern, right? That's where in Palo Alto we have an approach saying secure an AI with an AI, right? That's where we use our precision AI model there, in which we use machine learning. Basically, we use machine learning to understand the historical behavior, understand the outcome of historical pattern in an organization, and do a deep learning model to basically do an predictive analytics in the SOC environment or from an entire cybersecurity prospect, and use generative AI to leverage human or an analyst to kind of do an co-pilot kind of task, right? If I identify some of the assets or any identities which is going to be a potential risk in an organization, how I am going to get more context out of it, rather than me going through 10 different windows. Shall I go to Copilot? Can I ask him what is the risk which is exposed by that particular asset, right? What are the probabilities it might have done a lateral movement, and how it could have impacted other assets in an environment, right? We need to have those kind of visibility, right? That's where we need to have an AI which is combination of your machine learning, artificial intelligence, enabled with deep learning and generative AI, so that you're able to address the business requirement in real time with analytics and automation first approach, right? So having said, not only having an AI and automation is not going to help security operations, we need to change the approach, or we need to transition the approach, the way we are addressing our SOC operations today. How many of you agree that you are following analyst first approach in your organization? anyone, like, are you following an analyst first approach or automation first approach? I know someone, I saw so many hands raising, right? Like they're from security operations. So maybe know, like, what is the approach do you follow? I hope, yeah. So as we speak, like 95% of an organization today in the industry, they're following analyst first approach. When I talk about analyst first approach, there are some rules and thresholds which are defined in an organization based on their known unknown behavior. Okay, they write a certain kind of correlation rules, and then based on that, they start looking for identifying those incidents are a true incidents or a false positive in an organization. They do a detection, investigation, and response. And the parallel, they also have an analytic engine, which is a black box, which is not going to be relevant in industry today, because we have seen that UA and analytics are there from last 10 years, but they're not going to address because it's a black box. It's not addressing the demands of the industry today. And then once we identify those anomalies or any change in behavior, that's where an analyst is going to approach the automation engine to go and mitigate that risk in the environment. That's a practice what we are following in the SOC industry today, right? That has to be changed. So how it has to be changed is basically when we see a threat in an organization, okay, the platform should be able to understand it in real time, go and run that analytics in real time, and enforce an action in real time without even a manual intervention. That's the approach we need to adopt. And then parallelly do a detailed investigation, okay, and enrich that information, do an automation, and then give a space to analysts only to supervise the actions what is being performed by the Security Operations Center platform. Means the analyst should not be looking into the day-to-day repetitive tasks, rather than he should be focused only on the elements which requires an hard decisions to be enforced, not the repetitive tasks what is doing on day-to-day basis. That's the kind of transition what most of the organizations are looking for. Not only that, to achieve this kind of outcome, basically we need to have a platform which is an unified data lake. If you look at a security operations center today, bare minimum there are 8 to 10 different technologies which are talking in silos, and it is not giving a complete visibility across your security incident for that matter. So basically what we are trying to say is that you need to have a converged platform which is combination of your endpoint data, where we collect a rich set of telemetry data. We understand the behavior of the user, we understand the behavior of application, we understand the behavior identities in your organization. We do a baselining of it, and we do a labeling of the learned behavior in the environment. And on top of it, if any deviations are happening, it could be contributed from the network, or it could be contribution from the cloud environment, wherever it could be emerging from. Based on the deviation, we should be able to enforce an action in real time with an analytics engine, right? So that's where the platform should give a unified data lake, so that more the data is getting infused into the platform, the higher the detection capability it provides you, right? So in any form, the unified data lake should consume the data, the complete telemetry data from any source. It could be from a cloud, it could be on-premise, or it could be an hybrid environment. And the UEBA should not only limit to certain data sources, irrespective of that, it should be able to consume the feed across your environment, and then start identifying the deviations, if at all, if a user or identity is exhibiting in the nature, right? And then it should also have a capability not only identifying the patterns or deviations within an organization, it should also have a visibility outside to inside. Means, what are the assets which are exposed to internet from my organization prospect? Okay, are there any vulnerabilities which are exposed to it? If it is there, how do I do a virtual patching to it? And how do I mitigate that risk if somebody is trying to compromise that in real time in my environment? So that kind of visibility the platform should have, and it should have an automation first approach with an AI-driven outcome, so that we respond to that with near perfect accuracy. So that's what the outcome we are looking to achieve. So here is the dashboard which I wanted to show you here, basically how we are achieving within our Palo Alto. So if you look at here, the one of the biggest challenge what we are facing in today in any security operations center is basically visibility. How many data sources are contributing to my security operations center, and how many of them are generating an alerts, and how much of them are contributing into an incident. So basically, alert fatigue is the biggest challenge in security operations center. So with our Palo Alto, with our autonomous SOC, we are able to consume different alerts from multiple heterogeneous data sources. We're going to do a grouping of those alerts into an incident based on the behavior which is exhibited. It could be from a network element, it could be from an endpoint or identity. Based on the MITRE tactic and 5-tuple rule, we are grouping those alerts into an incident. Not only that, once that alerts are being grouped, we are also looking at what are those different data sources which were contributing those events, and how much of them are being sustained in the environment. Is there a spike in contribution of events in the environment? If at all, if it is there, we are going to identify that, and then quickly we are going to group those alerts into an incident. Sorry. Down. Now, so we are going to capture that in real time. We are going to add all those incidents into the respective alerts into the respective incident based on the behavior what is exhibited, and then we are aiming to achieve this response, automated response, without even a manual intervention. So if you look at here, there were 127 incidents which were triggered in the SOC environment. 97 were automatically responded. So that's the kind of autonomous SOC what we are looking for. So the analysts will be given back their free time, and they'll be focusing more on doing a threat hunting activity and so on and so forth. Not only that, when we identify those incidents in the environment, we are basically grouping those alerts for a respective incident. And if you look at here, we are very much in line with the NIST framework. Basically, NIST framework says that identify your assets, okay, and then protect it, detect, respond, and recover. That's what they say, right? So whenever an incident is triggered, basically we are going to group all those alerts into a single incident based on the tactics which is exhibited, and the relationship between the multiple data sources and elements. If you look at here, there were around 6 data sources which contributed this particular incident, which is a Project Silver APT simulation which has been identified in the environment. And there were 19 alerts which were contributed from these 6 data sources. And then not only that, if you look at even here, without even a manual intervention, the platform was capable enough to enforce an automation playbook in real time, and it has executed certain tasks in real time, and then it is giving a recommendation saying that based on the behavior and the pattern, we recommend you to apply 2 more playbooks so that it can be completely addressed without even a manual intervention. And then on top of it, we not only provide you those insights, we also provide you an insight which are the artifacts which are associated to that particular incident, and what are the assets. It could be an identity or it could be service which is contributing or involved in that particular activity, right? So that's a kind of rich insights what we are providing in the platform, so that the analyst.
The problem of the enterprise today is that it is grossly distributed. You cannot identify users effectively. You can't identify where they're accessing from. You can't identify what they're accessing. So which is why any OEM that is worth their salt in the space is talking about continuous security or access, which is the SASE that we talk about, right? And every OEM has its own take on that. So the platform that you adopt for the enterprise should be able to, in a continuous manner, enforce 2 things. Every user that is accessing an enterprise application or a SaaS application from a organization-owned device must have the continuous security to connect to a security fabric before accessing, point 1. and any user who's accessing an application from an unmanaged device. Because you're using, I'm sure all of us use your own mobile phones to access, right? Any user that's accessing an enterprise application must still be secured when accessing the application itself. There are ways and means of doing that. There are multiple players that allow us to do that. The flavor that we are trying to ask you to do is enforce that level of AI security that allows you to visualize and control applications once that traffic hits that SASE framework layer. Any other questions? Yes.
Yeah, thanks for the presentation. It was very good, first of all. So while talking about like multiple tools, right? One is from the SOC, on the other side about the access broker and all those things. So when it comes to a CISO for organization deciding which product to go with, what is your advice for them to go decide the accuracy of the product? Because many of the products are giving like marketing saying that 100% accurate when it comes to AI related security catches and all, right? So what is your advice for CISOs?
Okay, so there's a Palo Alto Networks advice and there is personal advice. So if someone tells you 100% security, I mean, we are with DSCI, you can't say there is 100% security. Like, 100% security is a myth. We're not getting there anytime soon. But at the same point, right, the recommendation, and this is an OEM agnostic recommendation, you know what your enterprise is. You know what kind of data you need to secure. And with the visualization that we've given you, you know the kind of applications and the users that you need to secure. Look at it from a functionality standpoint, evaluate OEMs from the perspective of what capabilities they bring, and make sure that you reduce the sprawl that you have. The biggest problem that we have in the cybersecurity industry and what Malli was speaking about is, when we do our SOC modernization for organizations, we realize that there are organizations that have between 30 to 50 different products that are doing maybe 30 to 50 different things. It's difficult for us to get context in the SOC if you have a sprawl like that. So look at your functional use cases, see if you can go to a larger provider that's able to provide the functional use cases, and don't be wowed by the 100% numbers that you see outside. And that's marketing fluff. Yes. The person who has a mic will go first, sorry.
Hello. So thank you for this. First of all, it's a wonderful presentation and a nice use case. So my question, I've seen that automation SOC is solving a MTTR problem. And I think the other problem is that like we are solving the visibility as a AI perspective. I've seen the multiple full data, but small thing I just want to know that like the security control perspective, like because we have a multiple visibility here. So is that Palo Alto dashboards are also giving the visibility that what all security controls are implied? As a CISO perspective, these are the gaps we have. And here we have to focus on so that we can take actions quickly. So do we have those visibility as well on those dashboards?
Yes. So across each of the, I know we sort of worked it out as a workshop where they actually showed you stuff. Each of those consoles has the relevant compliance frameworks and sort of executive dashboards that allows executives to take that information and then look at it to maybe present it to the board or take corrective action based on that. That's available across. Yes, I think.
So the question is regarding, so what we saw is more on the code and on the data side, right? But most of the vulnerabilities or challenges that you see is at infrastructure and a software level. Like if it is a Linux hardware related or kernel level, you can't really do about it. There are no fixed vulnerabilities. Then you have a Python version which does not have a remediation, right? So those are the areas which I think most of the people are not able to help with, right? So what do you have for that?
Yeah.
If it's,
I have a mic.
yeah, will be asking.
Yeah. So I focused on the AI security posture management, but definitely you need to expand that to cloud security posture management, your container security posture management, and basically your code security posture management. Yes, in the runtime, just like we discover all the AI apps, we also can discover all the containers, underlying Linux operating system, and the Lambda functions and serverless functions, and we can give you the gaps over there. And as specifically we're talking about continuous Kubernetes where the rate of change is quite high, you have vulnerabilities that are identified, but you're not able to patch, or you're waiting for 3 weeks for it to be patched. Can you do virtual patching? Yes, we do have capabilities around it. Definitely there's a right thought process, because you cannot rely on developers always because they have their own pace. You have to do the in-between security. That's the right thinking. Yes.
Yeah, Malli.
So and on top of it, end of the day,
it could be a developer or an analyst whomsoever, he will be having handheld device. It could be his corporate device or an handheld, like his personal device, right? End of the day, when he's doing, that's where I was saying the in an autonomous SOC, we need to have a platformization approach where we consume a complete set of telemetry data from an endpoint prospect as well and from the cloud prospect and the network prospect. So we understand the normal behavior of an user, and then if any abnormal behavior if he is exhibiting, then we identify it and mitigate at first level. And second thing, if there is any vulnerability which is trying to exploit, right? So since we are tightly integrating our endpoint protection module into our SOC monitoring capability, so if somebody is trying to do an exploitation of vulnerability, we mitigate at that execution level itself, so that your risk to exposure is brought down by 90% in your environment. That's the kind of speed we are trying to adopt in your SOC, so that there are no risks or repetitive risks are triggering in your environment.
Thank you,
Thank
Malli.
you.
Thank you.
So in the interest of time, we will be available for any further questions. And we had some goodies to give away. So we'll just, Vinayak sir, maybe you can come on stage. A couple of questions. I'll need a show of hands before you answer, because while we are in a democracy, I don't want us fighting to say who answered it first. Right. So the first question, when Rakesh was doing the cloud demo here, he actually covered 2 data models and their exposure, right? What were the 2 data models that popped up on screen?
Unsanctioned and
Sorry?
unsanctioned data model.
Rakesh's, no, not unsanctioned. So he went into cloud environment.
Yeah.
AI models, sorry. I sometimes go wrong. What were the AI models? Any responses? Yes? Titan and?
Lightning jacket.
So AWS. So Titan and ChatGPT. So maybe Biswas, where's Biswas? Biswas, can you just get, so one to the gentleman, maybe you can stand up and open AI. You can come up on stage. We'll have Mr. Vinayak hand it over to you. Right. And in the interest of time, one more question. Where's my notes go? Yes. The next question. What percentage of users are actually using AI on a weekly basis now?
47.
Sorry? 57. You can come on stage, sir. Thank you. From that corner. Right. Biswas, thank you. So we will still be around. Thank you very much for your time. And I'd like to take this opportunity to thank DSCI and specifically Mr. Vinayak. Thank you for having us here. I hope Calvin, come on stage, please. Where's Rakesh? Come. So it's been an honor and it's been a pleasure following up the stage with what Mr. Vinayak actually spoke about thriving in the new age of AI. I think we hope we've been able to give you a perspective of how security and we look at cybersecurity. We did not want it to make it a product presentation or give you a view of what Palo Alto Networks does. It was more to give you thoughts in terms of how you should be looking at securing AI usage within your enterprise. So thank you once again, DSCI. Thank you for being a patient audience. Thank you on behalf of the entire Palo Alto Networks team. Thank you.